Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first of our Myanmar British Council teacher takeaway events. A very big welcome to everyone. Today's event, as you can see from the opening slide, is focusing on teaching in low resource context. And we have two excellent speakers for you today that I'll introduce to you in just a moment. Before that, I'd like to highlight a few slides for you just so you have some context and understanding of today's event. So, first of all, what are the teacher takeaway webinars? Well, as you can see from this slide, the teacher takeaway webinars are focusing on offering local insight and practical continuous professional development ideas that support teachers engaged in English language teaching. Now, it is important that we highlight in these events some local perspectives, and our speakers today are from Myanmar and will give perspective from that context. And I think that will be extremely valuable, or I certainly hope so, from teachers' perspectives. We really do want to offer practical ideas and tips in these events. So today's event, which is focusing on teaching in low resource contexts, will explore some ideas and tips shared by fellow educators on how to adapt and utilize resources at our disposal to best provide instruction in contexts where resources may be limited. The event will offer both principles and ideas or concepts and practical ideas for our audience to take back to their classroom. So I really do hope you find it useful today, and I'm very sure you will. I'll introduce myself in just a second with the speakers, but I'd like to get into a few areas of today's event that I think will be particularly relevant to you. Of course, as a British Council event, we do want to ensure that this is a safe place for everyone. So there are a few housekeeping rules. Please do not put any personal information onto the chat or the Q&A, and please don't put any promotional messages into the Zoom chat box either. We do ask that everyone is polite and considerate of others in the chat too. As you can probably see, to avoid disruption of today's event, the microphones and the cameras are turned off, and they will be off throughout, but you will have a chance to interact with our panelists and myself through the Q&A and the chat box. And we also have some questions that were provided to us at the registration stage. So we will try and get through as many of those questions as we can. We do have moderators watching the chat, and if there is an element of some of the things we wouldn't like in the event, then the moderators may have to remove certain people. So we do ask that people do show respect to the speakers and other participants in today's event, and thank you very much for that. As part of the British Council's policy of inclusivity, we also have simultaneous interpretation available to you today. Now, if you look on the Zoom dashboard, you should see a globe, and upon clicking on that, you have a choice of choosing the English or the Burmese language presentation of today's event. There's also the opportunity to use sign language interpretation. So if you can look on your screen now, you should see a globe or a world, and you can choose using that icon. If you're using a small screen, you may have to click on the three dots that offers more options in the menu, but those are there for you to use. So some key elements, I've covered a few. The session today is being recorded, so to let you know that that is the case, although the video and microphones are not on, perhaps if a question is asked, we may read out the name of the person who has asked the question. So it's important we do make you aware of that. Please do put any questions into the Q&A box. You should see that at the bottom or the top of your screen, depending on the device that you're using, and we will try to ask as many questions to our speakers as we can. For those of you interested in a certificate for today, an e-certificate, then we are issuing those. Those will be provided via a link at the end of the survey. So after today's event or in the closing stages, we'll give you a QR code for the survey. And by completing the survey, this offers a link to the e-certificate. So please, it would certainly be much appreciated by all of us on the team if you could complete the survey and receive the e-certificate. A last few points. Again, we want to make this a safe and inclusive environment for everyone that's participating. If you do have any concerns, regarding safeguarding or anything that has happened or been said or been recorded in this event, please do let us know by contacting this email address. We do take this very seriously, so please do let us know if there's anything you have seen within the event that you feel concerns you. And also, to find out more about this policy, this link is available to you. These slides will be shared later for you to access if you need to copy that link. Now, to our speakers. I'd like to offer a very big welcome to our speakers today. My name, as you can see in the slide, is Fraser Buick. I'm a senior academic consultant with the British Council. But more importantly, our speakers today, we have Team Mamate, who is the Executive Director of the SIA Foundation, and Min Pambo, Education Consultant and Teacher Educator. So they will be presenting today on our topic of low resource context. More specifically, as you can see from today's schedule, they have two topic areas they'd like to focus on. Now, today's event is 70 minutes, and we've divided in this way, and we'll do our very best to keep to this schedule. We have a somewhat unique presentation today in that Tet and Mo are going to be presenting together in a joint presentation. So we'll start with Tet, and me and Pambo will provide the body of the presentation, and we'll close with Tet. So I won't be joining for that period, but I'll be back after the presentations to work with the questions that we receive. So I do look forward to receiving those questions. And finally, we will be sharing some resources at the end of today's event to provide you with further resources you can take away from today's event. So thank you very much for your attention so far. I won't take up any more time. I'd like to pass over to our first speaker, or our first speakers today, as they're doing a joint presentation, Tet. Thank you, Tet. I'll stop sharing that.
Hi everyone, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Fraser, and thanks everyone for being here. It's my honor to be part of this panel to share with you all on community-oriented theme-based teaching based on my experience working with the community schools and faith-based schools in Myanmar. So thank you so much, everyone. First of all, I'd like to start with the concept that the fact that low resource does not mean no resource, because whenever we talk about resources, there are so many challenges and benefit from the resources that are contributing to our classrooms and schools. But low resource does not mean no resource, and there are definitely solutions that we can find when it comes to low resources. And when it comes to the word resources, is very wide and deep. Is it about the human resources? Is it about the number of teachers that we are having in the school? Or is it about the physical space that we are talking about? Is that material that we are really in need of? Is that about the technology that we need to enhance? Or is that about the access to updated information and technology that we're talking about? Or is that about the support system, not having enough insufficient community or parent support to the schooling or education? Or is that about the curriculum? Or is there about the language support that we are talking about? Or is there about the connectivity as in like mobile connection and networking? There are so many resources that are contributing to the education and schooling of our children. And those each resources are also significantly contributing for teachers and the school so that we can create effective lessons. And of course, when we have low resources in this area, there have some impact in our schooling as well. So like I said, I like to assure that there are always solutions to different problems that may be caused by certain resources constraints. For me, I work with community schools and faith-based schools in low resource context across Myanmar. And there are so many fascinating stories that I hear from them regarding their resources and their solutions as well. And there are so many key problematic areas that I found whenever we are working with the community schools or faith-based schools Today, I'd like to highlight two key problematic areas that we found when we are working with the school. Number one is human resources, as expected, right? So there is a shortage of teachers or the staff who are working for the school or people who are working for the education programs across Myanmar. And also one big problem that are faced by the schools in very remote and rural areas are inaccessibility to the technology or connectivity. By connectivity, what I mean is mobile connection to be able to call to one another or to be able to connect to one another through mobile communication. And these two factors are having a lot of impact on the schools in Myanmar. Of course, financial resources are the big the constraint that are facing in our school. But today, I would like to highlight on how we are working to solve the issue with the human resources and its accessibility to technology in the schools that we're working with. Human resource issues. So there are a few solutions that we're coming up with. The first one is using multi-grade teaching method. So one teacher is teaching two or more than two grades, but in one place, and they are teaching similar lessons together as a group, and they're using multi-grade teaching methods as part of the solution. And the second one that we are really using and having success is peer educator program. So selecting some of the older children from the school to lead some of the reading sessions and some of the sharing sessions to work with the younger children. So, for example, if the school is having up to grade 4 and maybe some of the students from the grade 4 work closely with the teacher on facilitating the learning of younger children because there is an insufficient number of teachers in the school. So in that way, we can also nurture the facilitation skills, the leadership skills, and the capacity of the older generation who are taking the leading role together with the teacher, while the younger children are getting extra support from the older generation as well. So this program is really successful in some of the schools that we are working with. And the third one that we are working on is the project-based learning methods in the schools. So project-based learning basically means based on the project, the teachers and students work together on different learning, different subjects and contexts. For example, in the rural area, let's say the students and the school need to build a small hat for the school, then they have to come up with different things to work on this. So, for example, as part of the literacy lesson, so maybe the student will come up with different questions to ask around the school on what kind of hat, what kind of thing that they would need, and then they would write up a report in their language, in their mother tongue, or in Myanmar or in English, but as part of the literacy lesson. And also, as part of the mathematics lesson, for them to build the hat, they need to do a lot of measurements. They need to know about the prices. So they need to do a lot of calculations on that. And also, they need to consider the geographical information so that as part of geography lesson, they can talk about geography and like which landscape that they are going to build and how are they going to build it. So based on the project, the students are learning different subjects together. It can be integrated into multi-grade teaching as well. Children at different age, different level, in different grades can participate in one project and learn together. So project-based learning has been really helpful for the schools with the limited human resources. And the fourth one is theme-based learning, and the fifth one is community-based teaching, which I would like to highlight in the later PowerPoint presentations. And the second problematic area that I wanted to highlight is the inaccessibility to the technology or the materials. Like I said before, it's in the rural area, it's in the remote area. Some of them are in the politically unstable area. So it's like they have a lot of difficulty with accessing to advanced technology or online resources or online training. So in that kind of situation, we are suggesting to use theme-based learning programs and community-based teaching, which I will highlight soon. So community-based teaching. Community-based teaching, like the word said, it is based on the community, teaching based on the community. So it's a community-centered teaching, using community as a resource to teach the children about different topics. It can be about the community itself, or it can be using community's resources to teach a different subject. So it is also about sharing the local wisdom by local people of local people as well. So like in some of the learning programs that we have, what we are working on is we invite the parents or the community members to be part of the education team in leading some of the education program. Maybe they can be the guest speakers, or they can be the guest facilitator, or they can be vocational trainers, or whatever contribution that they can have. We are collaborating with the community to teach to the children. For example, if the child's parents are farmers, they can come to the school to talk about farming, their experience in farming, and then the children can go to their farm, be volunteer there, and work with them to learn about farming as well. So learning about local wisdom, local ideas and stuff from the local people, by the local people. And also sharing cultural traditions and indigenous stories as part of the history as well. So across ethnic areas and other rural areas, sometimes it's really difficult to have access to highly quality resources. But in that areas, there are a lot of senior people who can share about their cultural traditions and stories. And those can be used as part of the story lessons, history lessons as well. When it comes to history, it's not just about what is written in the text. It's about us. It's about the community. It's about what has happened in the past. And based on what has happened in the past, we usually take lesson learned and then we improve the experience in the future. So by learning about the cultural tradition that we have in the community, we can take the lesson learned, we can improve our community as a whole as well. So we can use cultural traditions and stories as part of the history lesson as well. And also, like I said before, the community have different expertise already. I mean, there are international community who holds very natural expertise as well, but local people have local expertise that are relevant and that are embedded in our own community as well. So using local vocational skills, local expertise to serve and develop the community that we really need to support. So this approach is basically using community as a resource to improve our teaching in the community. Please remember that people in the community can be great resources for you. The history of the community, the language in the community, the tradition in the community, the stories in the community can be really referenced as resources in teaching different subjects. And it is even really more effective for the children because they grew up in this community and they are responsible to improve or develop this community. So they need to know about the community as well. So using this local knowledge, the local expertise to improve and develop their community is required. So community-based teaching is necessary and essential in low resource context, and not only in the low resource context, but also in other contexts as well. And the second part that I like to highlight is theme-based learning. So theme-based learning is like community-based teaching is community-centered. And theme-based learning is usually learner-centered, and it can also be locally relevant approach for the teaching and learning as well. Theme-based learning is teaching and learning based on a theme or a topic. And based on that theme, we connect across different subjects into integrated curriculum and then provide the connected learning experience to the children for effective learning experiences. Let me give you an example that I do with my little boy, 2.5 years old, a few weeks ago. So my son's name is Fai Lao. So Fai Lao and I was on a trip, and we had not much of teaching material or worksheets or whatsoever to work on, but we had the nature at the center. So what I was doing with him was to appreciate the value of our nature, our trees and plants, and how he feels, etc. So like value lesson was given um, first. Then we took some of the leaves, and then we were exploring the color, the texture of the leaves, and the size of it. So we explored different colors, and then he learned about different shades of green from this lesson, and then he learned about it. And then we talk about how the size of the leaves can be different and how the color can be in different shades as well. Then based on that leaves, we came up with the mathematic lessons as well. So since he is only 2.5 years old, I don't have to use a lot of complicated mathematics, but based on the same leaf that we picked up in the morning, we used it to learn about the shapes. So we learned about the square and triangle using the shapes as well, and we really enjoyed it. This is only a snapshot of very short theme-based learning. So when we are talking about theme-based learning, it can be about a festival, it can be about a theme that is in the community or that is really enjoyed by the students in the school, and then we can create different lessons as well. So for example, if we are teaching about water festival, or generally about the festival as a theme, then we can talk about festivals. We can write about the festival as part of our numeracy lessons. We can talk about the words and vocabularies of related to festival in English when we are learning English. And also under the theme of festival, we can really think about the costs and the numbers related to the organizing the festivals. And also, we can also talk about environmental education by talking, okay, what are the environmental impact to this kind of festival, etc. So different kinds of curriculum, different kinds of subjects can be integrated into one theme and be facilitated. In this way, we can save a lot of energy and also support the children. And by connecting the subject, by connecting the learning experience, and by making learning as a journey, the children can learn even more effectively because they can learn that, oh, Myanmar, English, mathematics, all these subjects can be connected and it can be as part of our life journey together as well. One of the issues that we find in Myanmar context is that children find it really difficult to connect to subjects, between subjects. So Myanmar is taught alone, English is taught alone, maths is taught alone. Sometimes it is not connected to our daily life. But if we cannot connect these learning, these subjects into our daily life and with one another, how can learning be sustained in ourselves? So it's really important for us to connect the subject and connect the subject to our life is really important. And in this case, theme-based learning can be a solution. So to concluding for first part of my sharing, I'd like to highlight on that community, stories, and nature can be the greatest resources in low resource context. So please don't underestimate the power of community, stories, and nature and things around you, people around you as well. And teachers, you are at the core of effective and inclusive education as well. So really, teachers who are very capable, who are experienced, who are creative, and who are critical thinkers are really, really necessary for low resource context as well. And even without anything, alone, with you alone, we can create effective lessons. So thank you so much for your time, and I'd like to hand over to Siamin Baimon. Thank you.
Thank you, Siama. All right. Hello, everyone. And this is Min Pai Mo, and nice to meet you your page. I can see your page. So good afternoon. And well, here in my section, so I will discuss like practical and useful examples of how to utilize differentiated instruction in low resource classrooms. So by the way, so I've been teaching I've been working as teachers and teacher educator for 10 years. So my discussion will be based on my personal and professional experiences. So let's get started. Yeah, my discussion based on material design and alternative assessment and digital tools. So let's get started with the material design first. All right, so your students do not have colorful course book and you do not have audio files for the listening talks. Are you going to use the material as stated? Why or why not? I think like these are the questions we teachers and teacher educators like always like ask ourselves before prepare our lesson. So what would you do and how could you do that? So, well, the answer is scaffolding. So here I want to like suggest, and I'm going to share my experience later on. So the scaffolding is like more on like making the learning more easier and more effective and more interactive. So what you can do is you can add some talks or you can remove or replace some talks and the questions in your lesson. And also you can change some talks and even the learning outcomes, because here in the lesson you can see like, so some of the talks like they have only 1 or 2, but so what about if your students like like familiar with the animals before, or so we have to adapt or we have to remove some parts, so we have to add some more talks here in the lesson. So can you go to the next slide? Thank you. Yeah. So let me give you like some sample lesson here. So first you will see I changed a little bit. I mean, I add some talks here. So I'm ask the students to guess the animal first. So which part of the animal? And the second, go with and showing the answer. And I'm gonna make sure they know the animals' names in the third stage of the lesson. And in the fourth stage, so we will go with, the some talks exercise here. And can you go to this next slide? Okay. And then we will check the answer. But first, I will ask them to check their answers on their own. And then we will confirm the answer later on the whole class. And then in 7 stage, so we will move on the places. I asked them to match the pictures and the places, and then we will provide the answers together here. And then stage 9, so we will go with like the discussion section. So we will ask, put them in pair and discuss like where this the animals live and why, and why do they think so. And the last stage, so I will put like the personalized questions. Can you go back to the previous slide? Yeah. In the last day, you will see I put like the personalized questions. So what animals have you seen, where, and what were they doing? So these are the like kind of the stages that I adapt and that I add in some stages that I remove some parts of the question. So the last question is actually listening, the leading questions for the listening talks, but we don't have any audio file. That's why I changed, like I took like one question and added on the previous lesson, the previous task. So this is how like we can change and adapt and remove and the lesson. Remove the questions or tasks in the lesson. So basically this is like mostly more on for online classes or maybe even the in-person classes. But teachers, you can ask me like, okay, what if we don't have any PowerPoints or any internet or computer or laptop? Well, so we can use teacher as a resource. So like Siama mentioned before, so we can use teacher as a resource here. For example, I would use like in the very first talks, I would use, like the Pictionary. So I'm going to draw the picture of the animal and ask the student, or maybe we can ask the students to draw the picture and the other group can guess the answer. So first, we'll make sure everybody in the class know the names of the animal, know the animals, their nature, and so that's our first step. So we can use Pictionary, or maybe we can use some miming. So we can ask like the students to act out the animal and the other group can guess. Or maybe we can add like some the matching activity. The teacher can write the places on the board and the description on the right and ask the student to match. Or even we can teacher can provide the sentences and guess the meaning from the context. So, and also for the activities, like the talks, so that we can do like kind of rip and run activity. So teachers can put like the paper stripe on the board and ask the student to grab and pick and guess the answer or guess the name of the animal. So in a small group or in a small size class. So these are how we can do without any like kind of paper or any PowerPoint or any slides, what the teachers can do in person classes. So yeah, so basically it's to wrap up this activity. Yes, next slide, please. This activity, so in material design, so we can make a small change or big change, so whatever. So teacher, you can decide. So it's up to your students. And the second, so you can add, of course, this is to enhance the student learning and improve the outcome. Like I did before, you see like there are only like 2 tasks, but I add like some talks and some activities in the lesson. And I also remove some questions and some talks that are not like appropriate for our students. And of course, you have to evaluate before and after the lesson. That means like before you prepare a material for your lesson, so you have to evaluate if the material is like appropriate or suitable for the student age and their proficiency level or their culture. And if your lesson or your material like kind of include various types of activities, or if it's like kind of help the students to learn or to interact and to engage more in the lesson. So these are the suggested things that you can do once you differentiate the instruction of the material. Moving on, so this is another example of material design. So you want to teach a listening about the weather forecast, but the audio is not available. What could you do? So yeah, the answer is very clear. Of course, we'll find the free online resources, such as from the British Council Learning English or Test English and YouTube video lessons. So you will see this is very useful because as I'm a teacher too, so I'm trying to like find the free resources online always. And I find it really, really helpful and useful and very reliable. That's why I'm sharing with all of you. I'm not actually promoting the British Council Learning English, but it's really, really helpful. So please go and check. So you will see many like kind of categories and many things that you can do there. And the second one is like the YouTube video lesson. So I'm always like talking about like teachers and the lessons, but what about the teacher educator? Of course, you can do you can use YouTube video lessons most effectively. Recently, I have conducted a teacher training to teachers and Kachin State. Like it's like kind of 35 church-based education teacher. So so they don't have they didn't have actually like a kind of teaching classrooms for teaching practice or the micro teaching. And also they didn't have any like kind of classes for observation. So what I did is like I chose 2 videos from YouTube. One is from the British Council, it's more on like classroom management, like facilitating multi-level classroom. And the second one is from another platform. So I use the video as a resource because so we don't have any classroom for observation. So I use that video as a resource, and I start with like some kind of before watching questions, and I give them a kind of a checklist. So while they're watching the video, they have to tick and check so what they observe in the video. And after the video, we just come together and discuss like what they observe and what they notice. And, so these are like how we use the YouTube video effectively. And also make sure the resources you use are appropriate for your learners, for your student teachers, but if it's authentic. What I mean here, authentic is like, for example, if you're teaching a weather focus, here, for example, here in British Council Learning English, that might be kind of a bit graded language. That's also good, but for intermediate or upper intermediate students, so you can use some authentic lessons from YouTube or from, for example, like weather focused news from BBC or CNN. So make sure if the text, if it's difficult, so please make your tasks are easier, and vice versa, you know. So again, you can add and remove or replace when necessary. Don't forget to evaluate your material always. And moving on, we so sometimes, you know, as teacher or teacher educators, we always think, oh, we need high quality learning resources to develop like critical thinking skill in our students. So for me, I would say no. Well, so actually, effective questioning can help students to develop critical thinking skills, especially in our situation. So that would be the most like feasible and practical way to develop critical thinking students. And sometimes, so you know, before you start with your lesson, so you can check the question that you're gonna like include in your lesson. So if the questions are appropriate, like appropriate mean like age or their proficiency level or culture. If it's not appropriate, you can simplify the question, because some of the questions, so it's not relevant to the culture or the language. So you can simplify the language, or you can make it appropriate like according to their culture. So that's how we can change the question. And the second, that would be great if you can include some personalized questions, because like personalized questions really encourage students to engage in your lesson and also to think more and also to speak more if you're teaching English. So personalized questions really good for you, for students and for you teacher as well. So you can easily like kind of generate personalized question. For example, like, do you think like imagine if you are so, and also you can integrate more open questions. Sometimes so teachers, so we are kind of busy bee, and we don't have like, you know, much time. And what we can do, of course, that you already have the lesson and I mean the template lesson or the lesson and the questions already. But what we can do, so we can add some more open questions. So open question can really, you know, enhance students' high order thinking skills. So you can integrate like more open questions, like I mentioned. So what if, or do you think if, or, you know, imagine if you are doing something, blah, blah, blah. So these are how we can, you know, and develop critical thinking skills in students. And the last is, but not the least, that's like kind of, we're going to use some like kind of techniques to promote the equity and improve the depth of understanding and questioning. Sometimes teachers you know, forget like to make it more inclusive when they ask question. So they can nominate, or maybe they can ask the whole class about how we can do that to promote equity. Like we can give like everybody a chance to answer the question. So first is like think by share. I think you are all familiar with that technique. Like think individually first, time, don't forget to give the time to think, and the pair, like discuss in pair, and they share the class, or sometimes square, like 4 in group, and share what they discuss. So that's really, really helpful. I encourage you to use, and I'm always use that, you know, in every lesson. And the second one can be the value line. It can be like you can ask a student line up in the class, and they will sit like, you know, and then you can ask like 2 options, or maybe true, false, or yes or no, or maybe like they have to put it into like in degree or order. So, and after that, you can ask the question, why you pick like true, why you think it's false, why you choose that side, why do you choose this side? So this is a question like how you can develop the critical thinking skill. Like, okay, I think it's like true, I think it's false, because so they're coming up with their like kind of different question, different answers and different perspectives. So, and voting and ranking, same, like you are giving everybody chance to answer. They're gonna like rank the options first, and they will come up with their own answer, like why they rank this one first, second, third, and fourth. And the corners, that's also beautiful activity. So teacher, as like you can prepare like some questions and put it in every corner of the classroom, and put them into groups and ask them to discuss in each like corner, and then ask them to move like anti-clockwise or clockwise, you know, give some time to discuss. So they were discussing group. This also helped them to develop critical thinking skill, at the same time problem solving. Some time for like some sort of like science activity, science question, they have to think and create, and also like solve the problem. And also like communication, collaboration, they have to work in group. So these are some awesome techniques that I want to share with all of you. And again, another like kind of another way that we can differentiate the lesson is like kind of providing alternative assessment. So some of you might familiar with the term like assessment. That when we say assessment, most people see like the test and exam. So here, of course, like tests and exams are really important. So we always like do and conduct the tests in our classroom. But the thing is that we sometimes forget like to provide students like the sample tests and the exam questions. So so students always come to the like exam the test like their test anxiety really high. So how we can reduce and make them relax and calm in the exam, so we can provide like some multiple sample text and exam questions. So you can find some online resources. So I'm giving you some example of online resources here, or maybe you can even like create your own test. And also, I highly encourage you to run the test trials, especially if you are conducting online test, because like I'm always trying to run like 2 or 3 times like test trial in my class, because so that like, you know, we can reduce the student anxiety, and also we can solve like some technical problem, or we can, you know, they familiar with the exam you know, format. So because they are like kind of having two anxieties, mainly two pieces of anxiety, because like one is technical problem and the second one is their exam and test. So how we can make it like kind of, you know, reduce their anxieties. So, and the second one is like allow the user memory aids. That's also really, really important, especially for those who need accommodations. I mean, students with like disabilities. So we can ask them to come up with their own like cue sheet. I will show you the examiner cue sheet later on, so that we can ask them to come up with their own like cue sheet. So they can have like some sort of, you know, formulas, short phrases or definitions, sample questions, answer, and specific example. So these are the thing that we can also need to take into account when we like prepare the test. So as a teacher, you need to like clarify, you need to make sure you have to confirm their cue sheet are, you know, permitted or allowed in the classroom. And the third one is sometimes, you know, so time is a limitation for all of us. So we don't have much time. So, but still we want to, you know, develop like critical thinking skill or the other core skills in our students. So what we can do, of course, so we can give them like kind of like open question, or maybe sometimes we also want to give them an advanced or complex assignment. So we can give them, because like that's like open-ended question. So variety of answer will come up, and also different ideas. So you can ask them to take tests home. But most teachers always have coming, oh no, taking tests at home is not like kind of appropriate. And it's also like kind of, they can cheat. No, how we can make it like a usable and practical one. So you can ask them to take tests home and on their own time, and given like enough time. So yeah, so that's also really work best with open-ended question. So I tried it like, you know, 3 or 4 times before. That's really work with my student, but I'm not quite sure the other student, because I'm like kind of, you know, for some like activity and some techniques, so that will work with your student, but for some it doesn't work. So you have to always like kind of adapt and change somehow. So in number 4, so that's also what I really like, the point, because you have to offer alternatives to traditional coursework and methods of evaluation. Mostly like we always think like test is the only way to know the student, whether student meet or achieve the learning outcomes. So actually, there are many a variety of ways we can assess our students' learning. For example, let's say like we all familiar with the story of like the hare and the tortoise. So after you have like taught the story of a hare and the tortoise, you want to give the students like, would you ask them to answer like fill in the blank and answer the question? So that's a good way. That's a traditional coursework. But what we can do is like we can ask them to summarize what they learn or what they, you know, learn from the story, like an essay, critical essay. Or maybe some students, they really want to create a book cover. So let artistic do that, okay? And the final chapter, some like kind of, you know, poet, like the writers, they really want to write the final chapter. Okay, what will happen after the story? So they will like kind of think, and they will create their own story later on, so different story after. And some poetic, so they want to write a poem. Okay, good, do that. And some people, I mean, some students, they want to like present what they learned from the story, so they can make a video lesson. So this is also one of the way that we can, you know, tackle the problem of low results, because like sometimes when we like ask one like kind of, you know, outcome, like do video, everybody do the video. So then, so some students, they don't have like a good video camera or a good camera, a good phone or camera. So that might, you know, and they don't know how to use the technology. So that can be the barriers for them to do, even though they have like, you know, a good idea, but there are those barriers like disturb them to achieve or to do their best. So I think it's like giving the alternatives to the traditional coursework really I mean, good approach in order to promote our students' learning. But make sure tell your students your expectation, and also make clear the rubric, and you are under the like same rubric, so you are not like kind of giving a different rubrics to the for the evaluation. And number 5, so you see develop alternative ways to be present or to participate. That's also really important. So most teachers, like we always like take into account the classroom participation when we assess our students. So but when they see like the participation, so they see only the one who speak up in the class. This is not actually, so some students, they might shine to speak in the class, but what they can do, okay, please send me the text. Oh, sorry, please tell me the answers in the chat. Or you can send me privately, because some students, they don't want to like, you know, send in to everyone, but they want to send to privately. So, but still you can give them the space. For example, you can use the Jamboard, or you can use the other, can you go back to the previous? Okay, you can use the other, you know, to like Google Doc or Google Slides or the other digital tools to give their answer. For example, like you discuss a topic in the class, but some student didn't have a chance to contribute their ideas, or maybe they didn't have like any idea in the class. But after the class, so they might come up with some ideas. So you can give them a space to contribute or to provide their answers after the class as well. So you can give them a platform where they can like, you know, shout out, or where they can contribute their answers. So, you know, these are the how we can make like about how we can recognize their presence, and how we can give the alternatives to participate. So this is also really important in every single class. We don't need like any high quality resources to do that. This is like the memory 8 example. So thank you, Siama, and let's move on. This is the last part, but not the least. As you can see, there are lots of constraints and possibility using digital tools. So digital tools as a kind of way to, you know, differentiate instruction in the classrooms as well. So the first constraint can be like most classrooms, so we don't have like enough time for students to practice and master the content. What we can do, we can give them like, we can provide them self-study material, like the self-study courses. Okay, you can go that and you can do that. So they will go and they will do, so they kind of they can practice the content, or they can master. But this can be like before the class too, like kind of the flipped classroom, you will notice that. So this is not like kind of the mastering and practice, but it's the same, they have to do their own pace, like learning courses or learning tasks, and then they come like bring their like questions to the class, and in the class they discuss and find the solution together with their friends, and the teachers like kind of help her and facilitate the process. So, and the second, can you go to the second? Second one is like sometimes, you know, learning materials are not economically accessible. For example, in some cases, we don't have any printer, color printer, some textbooks are really costly. I mean, it's expensive. So what we can do, so teachers can post everything online before or after. For example, so you want to you want like your students to read something, so please put it like in your like channel or in your platform, for example, or LMS. Google Classroom or something somewhere. Okay, so if you're using something, so you can put them online, and PowerPoints and handout, even agenda. So that they can have like some sort of, oh, we are doing today this one before they come to the class. Or even you can ask them, like you can put like some questions so that they can bring the answer or idea to the class, because some students, they might need some time to generate the answer or to think. Some students are very quick, but some, like we all know, like first learner, slow learner. So we can, by giving the agenda so that they have a big picture of their classroom, big picture of the lessons, and they can think ahead and they can participate. And so this is how we can do to address like economically accessible material issues. And the third, so this is like the common issue that we're facing every day. So less student engagement in the lesson. So well, if I have to say that, so we can use more free online too. I mean, here I'm point out here free online too. I'm sure like some teachers really want to like buy some too, but still is fine. But what we can make like, best use of free online too. So here I give you like some like Bamboozle, WordWell, and the Padlet. I think it's like, oh, you all might know these digital tools. So for example, sometimes the lessons are not really attractive. I mean, like it's kind of boring, or some lessons might be too easy for some students. So what we can make is, so we change the text. So it's not like paper and pencil, but we change it into like online game. So especially like the young learner, they really like kind of love like to engage in like playing online game. So we make it make the lesson fun and interactive. I'll give you an example talks later on. And number 4, lack of resources for experiments. Of course, like I mentioned before, like we don't have like science lab. Sometimes we don't have language lab. No worries for that. So online tools, there are lots of online tools available. So for example, if you want to combine like some chemicals, you can go to the like some online tools and website, and you can combine those chemical and what with the project. So these are the things that we can do online, so without hurting your students. And no language labs, of course, teacher can create their own language lab through like kind of Google Classroom, or like there's some channel, post and question and answer, and interact and discuss, or something like that. So you can do your own, you can create your own language lab online, so not a physical language lab. And this is like kind of a sample task. So this is the original talks, kind of a bit boring. That's why I differentiate it into like the transform it into the online game. Here you can see how we can give the instructions to students, and they have to like put like these into each boxes.
Ming-Pan Mo, I do apologize for interrupting. We're quite over time now with the presentation, so if you could possibly round up this part, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like here, the last. Okay, sorry. Yeah. And okay, so it's like key takeaways for all of you. So you can see that make learning material accessible and use available learning resources productively. So that's really important. So we don't need to like find like the other resources, but how we can make best use of our like learning resources available. And again, I adapt, remove places, and evaluate learning materials, and always provide alternatives. That's really, really important. The last but not the least, we can use online resources effectively. That means like, so safety first, because we are teaching online. If you're teaching online, the safety like online safety is very, very important. So make sure like you chose like the reliable and the interactive and the online activity and resources that strengthen the students' learning experiences. That's really important. Last but not the least, please share the other resources. I mean, if you find like some resources are really useful and practical for the other teachers, please share with others teachers too. So we will learn and grow together. Thank you so much. I will pass the floor to the Siamat. Thank you.
Thank you, Sia, and thanks everyone for your patience. So, since we are getting to the end of our session, I'd like to remind you all that flow resource does not mean no resources. And Sia and I have already shared with you some of the techniques or theories and approaches that we can use. So, please remember that there are always solutions to different problems, and we are all in this together. But for us to solve all these solutions, we will need a lot of adaptability, creativity, collaboration, and support with the community, parents, teachers, and empowerment like continuous learning, monitoring and evaluation, our open mind, and our compassion, the ability to solve problems, and this willingness to help others. And if we have this, we will be able to overcome the challenges we are facing. It doesn't mean that we will have to be in low resource context. Of course, the policymaker, people in the school system have to make sure that all the necessary resources are available for the teachers and children. But in the cases that are out of control and we won't have enough resources, yes, we will need these to find the solutions. And our final message is that education doesn't only happen in highly resourced schools. Education is everywhere. Learning can happen anytime, anywhere, in any level of resources. So all of you, to all the teachers out there who are joining us or not joining, both in low resource context and high resource context, we'd like to, on behalf of our team, we'd like to appreciate you. We want to acknowledge you. We want to thank you, and let's all create a safer and better quality education for all the children. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much to both of you for those wonderful presentations, and thank you to our audience today, first and foremost, for your positive comments in the chat. So very much appreciated. We have a number of questions that have come in, and unfortunately, we've run a little bit over time with the presentation, so we won't have enough time to answer all of the questions. Just to reiterate to everyone that we will be answering these in writing after today's event, and we'll place these on the website along with the recording and the PPT. I know a number of questions have been asked about that. The link is in the chat, but we share the link again so you have that to access it. Well, let's get to the questions. I'll start with the live questions that have come in, and I'd like to start with the first question that came in, and I think it's a really important one because it refers to your test. It refers to your presentation where you mentioned locally relevant. So the question is simply, how can it be done?
So the question is, how can it be done? So the first step would be knowing what's available in the local context. So I think as a teacher, it's not just about teaching and curriculum and the children. It's all about the community and the country as well. As teachers, we have to be well informed about what's going on in the community, what's available, what resources can be found in the community as well. So to make it locally relevant, we have to know what's available in the local context and what is really needed. What are the gaps in the local context as well? For example, if you are in Shan State, and if you are in Shan State, your requirement might be different from who is in Mandalay as well. So for us to create locally relevant material or locally relevant curriculum, we have to know the local context and integrate local values, integrate local expertise, and use the local resources in your classroom so that we can make it locally relevant lessons. And the topic and the solutions can be targeted to the local community as well, so that the learning the children are having can be connected to the local community, and that can be applied to the local community as well. In that way, we can create locally relevant and sustained learning process in the community.
Thank
I hope
you.
that answered.
Thank you. Thank you, Shamali Chowdhury, for that question. Moving over to Mimpamo, there's a question from Abdesadek Lakar, and it's highlighted you presented some interesting alternatives we can use in low resource classrooms. So their question to you is, are the alternatives that you provided, or aren't they very tiring and demanding compared to when teachers have access to resources? And should they consider the students as a resource?
Oh, sorry, can't you repeat the questions
Sure,
again?
there's a double question here. Do you think the alternatives you presented today can be quite tiring for teachers in comparison with those who have resources? And can they use the student as a resource?
Sure, sure. I mean, yeah, so teachers only like kind of like prepare. So it's not like actually, and don't think it's like kind of tiring. So for example, like I mentioned like using the alternatives. For example, teacher only came up with one like kind of rubric, same rubric. So teachers using like one rubric only, but giving students alternative like to come up with what they want to do. So but teachers like make sure like their expectations first. So how they expect from like this activity or this kind of like an outcome. So students have to like pick their own way. So that means like I stay like the student center. So it's not teachers like giving them like what you have to do, but instead student like do they choose their own like how they want to present their idea. So I think it's more on like student part, but not the teacher part. But of course, teachers always make sure everything like the rubric and the expectations and the guidelines.
Thank you. Do you think
Yeah.
that connects to what you said, Ted, that students as a resource and making it locally relevant? So what is relevant to the students, and they're more willing to use language to discuss topics they know rather than something they don't know?
Yes, and also it's like the one that I shared, peer educators as well. In the low resource context, students are being used as resources and even as facilitators to share back and like to learn together as well. So definitely students and human around the school can be used as resources, definitely.
Thank you. Well, speaking of resources, of course, and students are different. Just everyone is different. Therefore, levels will be different, knowledge will be different. We have a question from Ong Kane, and I apologize, I don't know if it's a he or she, my knowledge of Burmese names. What are the best ways to teach in a balanced way for those who are poor in knowledge, i.e., that perhaps have a different level to other students who may be higher in knowledge? Is there a good way to differentiate? I'll ask you first is to continue from there, then we'll move to Min Pamo with the same question.
I think that would be the question that most of the teacher ask because the level of the knowledge capacity of the students are usually different. So that's why Xiaoming has highlighted on the differentiated instruction using different levels of instructions and techniques to tackle this issue. And one of the techniques that I have been using is thinking of children as experts at different fields. So having low knowledge in English doesn't mean they are low knowledge in every single subject. So for example, the student who has strong English can lead and can share with one another on English subject, while the other person who is good at mathematics or not even the subject skill, but in the social skills, or even in reading, or the community spirit, etc. So we have to know which area the children are good at, and utilize it to really help in the community and in the school as well, because they are good at something. It's our duty and responsibility to find where they are good at and integrate that into our curriculum and in our education program. Yeah, that would be my
Thank you.
answer.
Thank you, Ted. Min Pamo, if I could ask you the same question, and maybe I'll add to it a little bit, though, building on what Tess has said. Do you think that perhaps there's also a need for teachers to create different tasks for these students within the classroom? So we have that community aspect, the difference they have outside the classroom, but within the classroom, is that too
Yeah.
tiring for teachers, or is that something we must think about doing?
I don't think it's tiring again, because I mean, so when we talk about the multi-level classroom, so you mean like mixed ability class. So of course, like mostly our class are always like mixed ability, so we can know like the ability. And but still, what we can do is like we can differentiate the task. For example, for the same like exercise or the same lesson, but teacher came up with a different task for each student level. For example, teacher like change the task like kind of fill in the blank or matching and answer the question. So which one would be like the difficult for like easy, medium, and difficult? So for me, like the fill on the glove and fill in the gaps will be like a big like this medium one, and the matching will be easy, and answer the question they have to answer whole question, so that will be the difficult one. So let them choose their tasks. So teacher prepare 3, and you can pick any one of them. So this is easy, this is like kind of medium, this is difficult. So you can pick anyone. So they will pick themselves because they would think it's like, okay, that I can manage it. But at the end, so teacher always asks them to compare their answer. So they compare their answer. Oh, we have the same tasks. I mean, then different tasks, but the same answer. At the end, so first, like individual, like single ability group is grouping. Grouping is also important. Single ability group, and then mixed ability group together. So they all have a chance. They participate and they have their own like kind of authority to pick the tasks. So I think teacher only need to like change the tasks into different for the different ability level.
Yeah. When you say change the tasks, you're changing the rubric of the tasks
and the grouping too.
And the groupings.
Yeah.
I think it's important to highlight that addressing this mixed ability or mixed experience within classrooms can also help with motivation of students and engagement. And engagement can also relate to discipline and how students behave in the class. Of course, if they're not interested or they feel they can't achieve anything in English, then they may not be engaged. So this brings me to a question that I'd like to ask you, first of all, Mien Phai Moe, and then we'll move to Tet. And it's just a question that came from our registration page, and it asks, how can we grab our students' attention when they are chaotic? The chaotic is the word used, so I'll repeat it.
Okay. Well, actually, yeah. So we don't have like the best way. I mean, one size doesn't fit all, right? So, so that what teachers can do is like there are lots of attention like seeker or attention technique, attention grabber techniques out there. So please go ahead and explore by yourself. So so even like class clubbing together, or if you have like some sort of connection with the students, or maybe even you can play the song, or so there are lots of activity attention grabber so that you can use. So please explore more. You can even go to like YouTube, type like attention grabber, you will see like tons of like videos. So please try to use or tailor yourself in your class. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for that. Would you agree with that, Tet?
Yeah, and I like to add on the point that when we are talking about like the word chaotic, what do we mean by that? Sometimes it's like defining the word, like for example, my son is 2.5, so people say, "Oh, terrible too." Like I don't find that word really fascinating. Like even the word chaotic, maybe they are enjoying, maybe the children are enjoying that stuff. But in contrary, in our eyes as adults, we think is the chaos. But for them, is the complete happiness, maybe. So we have to redefine the word chaotic, and maybe if they are playful, then maybe we will have to arrange more organized plays within our lessons, or maybe we need some activity to burn their energy so that they can be quiet and focus on some of the lessons as well. So maybe I would suggest to find out why they are so energetic, playful, and like that's what I would suggest. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's an excellent point. Chaos is subjective to some extent. Children are naturally not going to be quiet in a classroom where they have to speak, i.e., speak a different language. So, and of course, if we are talking about children's classes, I assume we are in this case, then of course enjoying a class is going to help with engagement and motivation. Now we're just coming to the end of our time. And I just want to reiterate to everyone that we will be answering these questions and putting them on the website if we can't cover your questions here. So we do really appreciate all of the questions you've provided today, and we'll do our very best to answer them. I'd like to finish with one that really builds from this idea of chaos, as we've mentioned, and and mixed abilities, but also the context within which teachers teach. And of course, if we look at many materials online, they're based on the ideal ELT classroom, the 15 students or 12 students, and this is not always practical for teachers in larger classes. So Pierre Pyo Ong asks, what do you think are the most appropriate methods when we have a big class size and low resources? So not just a small class. I'll put that to both of you just to conclude today's event for the questions. Shall we go to Min Pan Mo first to answer that, and then to close?
All right. So large classes, like, yeah, I mean, large class is very common. It's like kind of 60, 70, even 100 in my class. Like, so, well, like, I think it's like, so how we can manage and how we can deliver the lesson without resources and low resources. So I think it's like, again, so teacher as like resource person, and the students are your resource. So, and also use appropriate, like, kind of, activities for your class. Like I mentioned before, even if we don't have like any resources, we can make it like kind of, like some activity like think show, or maybe even we can use the blackboard or whiteboard effectively. So also we can use like the textbooks, and also we can use like your like school environment as a resource. So yeah, so I think these are like how we can use how we can manage like in large classroom. So yeah, so I think it's like use human, teacher and the student as a result in a large classes.
Thank you. Tet, if you could provide a brief
From
response.
my experience working with in some classroom we had about 200 students, and working with the teachers who are working with large number of students, we usually work with the self-directed learning activities. So because usually in large classes we cannot provide that individual care, right? So in that case, we have to first train our students to learn how to do self-directed learning, and some of the techniques that can be done with the self-directed learning, then they can lead by themselves. That's one thing that we use. And the other thing is, I agree with Min that we can usually have lots of group works, even in the large classes as well. But in the end, it's all about the teacher. It's about, to be specific, it's about the teacher's compassion and teacher's capability as well. So if the teacher is creative enough and well informed about different methods and about the students, we can really overcome any kinds of challenge. That's what I believe. So I like to highlight that, please, teachers, and I love that a lot of teachers are joining to this webinar. Like today, please continue learning more about different methods and strategies, explore more, learn more, so that you can really facilitate in any kind of situation, in any size of classrooms. Yeah, so teachers'
Thank you.
capacity and creativity, that's what I want to highlight. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tay. Now we're going to go back to my slides here. So thank you so much for answering those questions. And again, we will answer the other questions after today's webinar and put them up on the website. We've run a little bit over time today, but I'm sure everyone is really keen to hear your insight into the questions. And of course, we have some resources now to share. So if I can close today's webinar by sharing a few things. Now, first of all, we have the survey. And as mentioned before, the e-certificate will be available to all participants today upon completion of the survey. We've placed it into a QR code to simplify. So please do take a screenshot or a picture, or indeed scan the survey now, but we have a few more QR codes to share with you, so don't scan it just yet, perhaps. So please, we do appreciate your feedback. It really helps us to improve future events and to plan topics and content that you enjoy. We also have this resource from the British Council Teaching English website that might be of interest to you. It's further articles and materials that cover teaching in low resource classrooms. So we would encourage and invite you to explore the resources available here also. So please do take a screenshot. More QR codes. Today was the first event of our Teacher Takeaway series focusing on Myanmar, and with Myanmar educators and experts providing their insights into different topics. The next event is next Thursday, and you can see it's collaborative CPD practices through non-formal education. Again, we have another QR code here. This will allow you to register for that event should you wish to join, and we very much hope that you do. And final point, we have an ASEAN Teaching English Conference lasting almost 4 weeks coming up in October. And again, we'd really love you to join the events there. This won't be focused specifically on Myanmar, but will include presentations from educators and experts across ASEAN and the UK. So there will be a menu of options for you to choose from. We don't have a QR code for this, but there will be more information provided on our British Council Facebook page that you can access through this QR code and link. So please do keep an eye on that for the events that are coming up and join us for that. So that really leads us to conclude today's event. Again, a huge thank you to our speakers today for your contributions. I think it was hugely enjoyable and certainly a learning experience for me to understand more about the Myanmar context. And a huge thank you to our audience today for your participation, your patience, and your contributions through the Q&A and the chat. I really enjoyed seeing those positive comments and questions come through, so thank you so much. So we're going to close the webinar now. We will leave it open for 5 minutes, and we'll share those links again for you in case they were missed during the event, so you can access the PPTs and the recordings on the registration slide and some other resources that we may have available to you. We'll be able to share in the chat over the next few minutes. So please do take a note of those. And thank you very much again for joining us. I'll see you next Thursday, I very much hope. Thank you again. Bye for now.